that I've got for everyone, going public isn't an exit strategy. It's just another part of the journey. And as a director, I mean, my shares were actually out of escrow for over 6 years. I mean, I could have sold my shares at any time. But as a director, I mean, what would you think of a company if the CEO and the director was selling his or her shares?
Pretty bad.
Exactly. So even though you can sell your shares, in theory, you cannot. And so, to exercise my options, I use my Destra shares to buy more Destra shares, exercise the options, all that kind of stuff. And so, once I got over all that anger, the whole notion of sadness began to kick in, and sadness along the lines of partly self-pity as well. I've worked for 15 years, and now it's all gone. It's all gone. And it took me a couple of weeks to really sort of get myself back up off the ground from that. And I remember waking up one Monday morning, and I asked myself, I now have a choice. I can continue wallowing in this self-pity and feeling sorry for myself, or I can just get back up and I can do it again. I can just get myself back up and do it again. And so I made a choice that I wasn't going to let Opus Prime or anything else keep me down. So that was the first thing that occurred. Now, 3 or 4 months later, I was saying, what's a couple $1 million here or there? And then, you've done it once, you do it again. Secondly, Prime Media, who was one of our shareholders, increased their stake to 44% of the company. I mean, Prime Media is a big regional media player, and that was a very, very good learning experience. Effectively, technically they didn't take control of the company, but when you have a shareholder that owns 44% of a public company, effectively they have control. And so what I decided at that point, and this is one of the learnings for all the entrepreneurs here, corporates and the way that corporates operate are sometimes very different to the mindset of how entrepreneurs operate. And I decided at that point that it didn't make sense for me to hang around and be involved in a corporate company, because that's just not who I am as an individual. And I'm still working with the guys at Destra in helping sell a couple of the assets. So I basically left Destra in April. And so this was like one shock after another. I've not only lost all my equity, but I'm sort of no longer running the company that I co-founded. So I was kind of feeling a bit so-so. And then an event occurred that just put everything into perspective. One of my friends' fathers, who I was quite close to, had cancer. And I remember sitting down next to his bed in Hong Kong, and basically saying goodbye. And I remember at that very specific point, the whole notion of Opus Prime, Prime Media, all the money in the world meant absolutely nothing. And 48 hours later, the angels sort of took him away. So that sort of, from a pure learning perspective, and sometimes, actually not sometimes, everything always happens for a reason. And what I've learned is I've done it once, I can do it again. And sometimes we focus on money, but that's actually the thing to completely not focus on. Like, that's actually not the most important thing in the world. So, in regards to lessons, learn who your friends are quickly. Little story. When we listed the company, we raised 16 million bucks. I had all these friends I didn't know I had. They were like popping out of them. It was quite amazing. And then the opposite was the whole Opus Prime, and effectively I lost pretty much most of my financial worth. It was actually really interesting as a way of, I guess, working out who my friends are and who my friends are not. And people that I didn't expect a call from or an email from, I got a call. And people that I actually really expected, not that I expect anything, but I thought would be calling, didn't. So sometimes these sort of events in life are a way of sort of clearing the decks and really helping you see the perspective and what's real and what's not. In terms of, I've got another point there, sort of taking the money off the table. One bit of advice that I will now follow, next time I go and sell one of my companies, I'll always take some cash off the table, no matter how much I believe in the company and where it's all going. Yeah. Always take money off the table. And so in terms of, if you want to IPO, great, but if you want to sell because you want to exit the company, trade sale it. Trade sale is basically the best way to take cash off the table. And actually, diversification is key. So take some cash off the table, put it into some property, put it into this, that, or the other. Just diversify. Diversification is really important. So you may ask, what am I doing now? Over the last 3 months, I've set up or invested in another 3 internet companies. I'm just in the process of setting up a fund to invest in upstarts, internet upstarts as well as green tech, because I actually think green technology is going to be the next wave. And you may ask, well, what's the difference between startup and upstarts? Startups are effectively starting with a blank sheet of paper, and there's nothing there. And the place that I'm focusing on are upstarts, where they've been running for 12 to 18 months, they've got their first revenues, they kind of got over that first hurdle, because from a pure investment perspective, that's the kind of mandate that I and investors like. And also working on another float for 09, 010 once the equity markets recover. And also, I should say, working with a couple of companies on mergers and acquisitions, because I love M&A. So in terms of, I won't go through all of these because I actually want to open up to questions in about 2 minutes. Sort of towards the end of Destra, when I was CEO, we had about 300 people. And the dynamics actually changed quite a lot as the organisation grows. And I remember, we started, it was, a couple of guys and myself, and then I slowly grew, 10, 20, and then we got to 300 people. And the whole personal relationship, the dynamics changed. You can't, I found it really difficult to remember everyone's name. That was something that I used to really try and strive and do, but it was just really difficult with 300 odd people. And also spreading the word, spreading the culture of the way that we do things at Destra. And I sort of broke it down into, one rule. We used to run, quarterly meetings, town hall meetings with everyone in the company. And what I used to impart on the team is that at Destra, we only have 2 rules in the entire company. Rule number 1 is when placed in command, take charge. Rule number 2, and this is the most important rule, do what you think is right. Do what you think is right. Because most people are honest people. Most people want to succeed.